I should just quit my job as a nurse and be a stripper. I heard my friends and coworkers say that on the job so many times that eventually, over time, I started jokingly saying it too. But it's kind of really sad that, that we'd be so unsatisfied and miserable at our jobs as nurses that we would even consider that as a viable alternative, or even jokingly, say it. Because that's not something to joke about. But the fact was, I really was miserable at my job as a nurse. I dreaded going to work every night, working night shifts. I was just so exhausted all the time. Not just physically exhausted, but like emotionally exhausted and spiritually exhausted and soulfully exhausted. I could just feel it like in my core being. I was so tired that on my days off, all I would do is sleep and still be tired anyways. I was so tired I didn't make time to do my devotions in the morning. Well, mornings. For me, they're at night. But, I didn't have time for friends because my sleep schedule was completely opposite the rest of the world, so I was kind of like socially isolated. I felt like I was crying all the time for no good reason. Sometimes even at work, I'd have to lock myself in the bathroom and just cry. I remember not really having the best nutrition. Nothing's really open, past 11 p.m. or so you have to, bring stuff with you, which I don't really cook that much, or, order fast food. So I was eating junk food all the time because you start craving sweets to give you that sugar rush because you're just so tired. You just really need something to give you energy. Coffee all the time, sports drinks and caffeine and soda. I had this great idea of what nursing was going to be like. I went into nursing because I wanted to help people and I wanted to be there for them during the worst times of their lives and minister to their physical needs so that maybe I could minister to their spiritual needs as well. People on their deathbeds, or they kind of get a wake-up call, with their health. They're more open to spiritual things, but the reality was completely different. I was getting just compassion fatigue and burned out so fast. I dreaded going into some patients' rooms. I got tired of putting up with the verbal and physical abuse. I can't tell you how many times I've been yelled at, screamed at, cursed at, spit at, hit, all those sorts of things. I got tired of patients' non-compliance. I got tired of all of their drama. I got tired of, dealing with the withdrawal symptoms, seeing the same patients come back over and over again because they didn't listen. So I was just spiraling fast. And I didn't know what to do, honestly. It was getting to the point where it was just really bad. It's kind of like you've worked for years and years, up to this point towards this degree. You spent your entire life really, through high school and all those other grades to get a degree in something and work. And the idea of throwing that degree away just seemed kind of crazy. I was making great money. Working the float pool, so I made extra money doing that, and I knew I couldn't get another job that would pay me the same, so I just kind of felt stuck in this job, not knowing what to do. And you see these other nurses working with you, your coworkers that are 50 years old, and they've been doing nursing all their lives, and they're just bitter, and they're just really angry all the time, and they have no other jobs they can do, and so you look at them and you're like, wow, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be stuck in this job when I'm 50 years old, still doing the same thing and hating my life, So I just didn't know what to do. And then a friend of mine actually came up to me and had this interesting talk with me. He asked me, he's like, Grace, have you ever planted or grown anything before? And I was like, yeah, I've had a couple of plants and squash plants and tomatoes that I've grown. He's like, okay, well, let's pretend that you're going to plant some lettuce. And I was like, all right. And he's like, you have a bag of seeds, you take half the seeds and you plant them, and they come out perfect. The lettuce is just perfectly ripe and fresh and crunchy, and it turns out the best. And so you take the rest of the seeds from the bag and you plant those, but those turn out to be all withered and brown and just mushy, and they're not good at all. He's like, so what do you do? And I'm like, well, I guess I would check the soil to see, you know, if it needs more nutrients, or if there's like too many rocks or weeds or something, or, you know, check and see if it's getting too much sun or too little sun, or maybe water it more, see if it's getting too much water. And he's like, why don't you just yell at the lettuce and tell it, you know, do better. You know, you need to do better at growing and make better fruit. And I was like, okay. And he's like, well, you know, we do the same thing with ourselves. He's like, look at your environment. Are you getting enough sleep? And I was like, no. He's like, are you getting enough nutrients? And I'm like, hide the bag of Doritos and Oreos. No. He's like, what about your social life? I'm like, that's kind of not good either. He's like, your spiritual life? I'm like, no, that's not good either. And he's like, well, how can you expect yourself to bloom and grow if you're not giving yourself the stuff that you need? He's like, you know that with the lettuce, the seeds weren't the problem because they had grown and blossomed before. He's like, and you know that you're not a bad seed because there's been periods in your life where you've been fruitful and been, you know, grown and blossomed. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And he's like, so there's nothing wrong with you. It's just maybe take a look at your environment. If you're not getting what you need, you can't expect yourself to grow and, you know, be productive. And I was like, that's really true. I never really thought about it that way, and that really kind of stuck with me, made me think differently. I was like, you know, I felt so guilty. I was like, wow, I felt like a horrible nurse. I felt like a horrible person because I was just so tired, so like depressed, had nothing to really give anybody. I was just like spiritually depleted, like running on empty. And so I was like, yeah, you know what, maybe I should start focusing more on my environment. And he makes a good point. And I was like, and then after I had that talk with him, I read these 2 books. One was called Not a Fan by Kyle Idleman. Actually 3 books. Another one by Kyle Idleman called Gods at War. And this other one called Seven by Jen Hatmaker. Not a Fan was about how to be more fully committed to Christ and not just call yourself a Christian in label and just in title, but actually to do, like, walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And then Gods at War was talking about the things that we hold on to in our lives or that we value more than God, that can distract us and just junk up our lives. And it can be anything. It can be a TV addiction, it can be a food addiction, just things that keep you from God. And then in 7, it was talking about this lady, Jen Hatmaker. She discovered 7 areas in her life that she really needed to like declutter and de-junk in a way. Her 7 areas were like stress and clothes and food, different things like that. And so I decided, you know what, maybe I should really take a good look at my life and kind of go on this spiritual reformation in a way. And so I came across this verse, which I'm going to share with you real fast. Hebrews 12, which says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And I was like, let us throw off. I was like, another way of saying that is let us strip off or strip away. And I told my friends, like, you know what, I've been doing a lot of thinking. You know, I appreciated what you told me, and I've been thinking a lot, and I think I'm gonna be a stripper and just quit my job as a nurse. And he was like, what? How is that better? How is that gonna help your environment? I'm like, wait, I'm gonna quit my job as a nurse and be a stripper. I'm gonna start stripping things out of my life, starting with my job first. And he was like, oh. So let me tell you, I quit my job as a nurse, which was very scary because, again, you know, I've been working towards this degree for my entire life, and I don't have another job lined up, and, you know, I'm not gonna be able to make the same money anywhere. But let me tell you, since becoming a stripper, I have never felt more free or more liberated, because now I can focus on the things in my life that I was not able to before. And so this video, the main purpose of this video is to tell you guys that I'm going on this kind of spiritual reformation plan that I've come up with for myself to focus on 5 different areas of my life that I feel have been seriously neglected. The first one is body, mind, heart, spirit, and soul. And I'm going to take 1 month for each. So it's going to be a 5-month endeavor, which sounds really ambitious, but I think it's going to be really important. And I know at times it's going to be uncomfortable, and it needs to be, because we can get comfortable in our habits and comfortable in, you know, being apathetic. But I think it's really time that I make a change. And so since I'm doing 5 different areas, I'm going to call this Take 5. You know, some people say we're going to take 5, they're going to go take a break from what they're doing, take 5, then come back. And so for me, literally, I'm going to go take 5 months and focus on those 5 different areas and see what else I can strip away out of my life, whether it be, you know, certain music that's holding me down, if it's certain activity, if it's certain people. if it's certain movies, or certain things I hold on to too tightly, or things I just need to get rid of out of my life that aren't necessary, that aren't necessarily bad, but aren't necessarily good either. And so I encourage you, dear listener, if there's anything in your life that you feel like is just sucking your soul, because nursing was literally sucking my soul, maybe you too should consider being a stripper and stripping away things that tying you down, the sin that so easily entangles.